All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Finance and Corporate Services Committee. I'll begin the meeting by asking if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'm not seeing any. We will get into the consent items. Can I get a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor O'Dooney. Any questions on the consent items? Not seeing any. Those in favor? And that's carried. Unanimously, sorry. So yes, we do have one discussion item today. It's on a topic many of us are certainly passionate about. Certainly I am passionate about this issue and the opportunities it may afford us in the future. It's on artificial intelligence, and from Communitech we have Mr. Clausen and Ms. McGillivray. I believe will be making a presentation. I'm not sure if staff's kicking it off or not. Go ahead. Ms. Amaral, go ahead.
This is my very first time speaking at council, so bear with me. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited about this afternoon session as well, because it represents an important moment in our learning journey. As we continue exploring how emerging technologies can support the work we do for residents, sessions like this will help ground our decisions, confidence, and shared understanding. We are pleased to announce once again Matthew Clausen, who's the VP of External Relations, and Carrie McGillivray, the Executive in Residence at Communitech. Here, two partners who know our community, understand municipal context, and bring deep insight into the opportunities and realities of AI. Today, they'll guide you through a practical and accessible introduction to AI, how it works, how cities are using it across Canada today. They'll also speak to responsible and ethical use, governance, and the importance of ensuring AI supports, not replaces, our judgment and accountability. You'll hear real municipal examples, learn where AI can add value to day-to-day operations, get a clearer sense of how we can adopt these tools thoughtfully and transparently. This is a great chance for us to build and share a foundation, ask questions together, and I'm grateful to invite Matthew and Carrie for joining us to help shape this conversation. I think I should clap.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, Council. On behalf of our CEO, Sheldon McCormick, and the Communitech team, and of course the local technology founders and their teams that we represent, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. A huge thank you as well to city staff for their ongoing partnership, and specifically to Nicole, who's been a tremendous in-house partner to us at Communitech through the work of the Innovation Lab. I hope it's obvious, but I want to reinforce why we're here today for this conversation. Communitech's focused on building a globally competitive tech ecosystem that's anchored by local companies. And one of the ways we're doing that in our current chapter is through a specific focus on artificial intelligence. Throughout 2026, you'll see a deepening focus on AI across all of our offerings, including our direct work with member companies, our event series, partnerships with other local innovation organizations around health tech and dual-use technologies, as well as community initiatives like the Waterloo Region AI Coalition. Throughout this community, founders and their teams are quite literally racing to get to the AI frontier, not only through commercializing their products, but also through their own adoption. While obviously different, this is not dissimilar from some of the steps you've taken as a city to adopt and deploy this technology. As with many organizations today, municipalities are being asked to do more with less. It even goes beyond more. Citizens and partners are looking for more quickly, more trusted, more accessible, more helpful, more consultative, more proactive. And at the same time, municipalities are responsible for an enormous array of services, legacy systems, and data. With this set of cards, AI poses an enormous opportunity and potential to redefine the trust and value of public services and our local communities in our lives. But it also comes with some very serious and consequential design choices. Over the next 60 minutes, you'll dive into technology and some of these considerations with a uniquely qualified technology leader. Very pleased to introduce one of the newer additions to the Communitech team. Carrie McGillivray is our Executive in Residence at Communitech. She was previously Managing Director at Tech Insights, leading large cross-functional product and technical teams across semiconductor reverse engineering and sustainable chip manufacturing intelligence. Something I don't have on my CV. She's also held senior leadership roles at IDC focused on mobility, Internet of Things, and emerging technologies. So welcome, Carrie, and over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting us today, and I hope this provides some insight and some thoughtful conversation around the impact on AI, especially within our municipality. So I'm just going to dive right into it. Is why AI, why now? So we have been talking about AI for the last several years, but it's been mostly theoretical. We've started to see adoption of generative AI, the chatbots that we're using on a day-to-day basis to review documents, to be able to determine a recipe that you might need, but how can we actually start to use it in organizations? And what we've seen over the last 12 months is that organizations like governments, enterprises, small businesses are starting to are looking for ways to find efficiencies with their workforce and with the technology that they have available. So we're moving from a time of experimentation to actually starting to incorporate it into core operations. And for municipalities, why is this so important? Well, residents want faster and more accessible access to digital services, to make decisions, to be able to get information, to be able to action items that are important to them, their household, and their residency within the city. Cities, on the other hand, are facing the need to do more with less. And as we think of AI as a way to augment the human component of the workforce, that's where we can start to see real gains. But backing it up a little bit, how do you explain AI in plain language? You can sit and listen to the commentaries on Twitter or in academic journals, but at the end of the day, what actually is AI? It allows machines to perform specific tasks that typically require human intelligence. Gathering information, organizing information, helping to provide synthesis of information and data so that decisions can be made. It can help understand language. It can start to recognize patterns across different data sets. And when I talk about data sets, this can be prose, this can be an Excel spreadsheet, this can be an annual report. This is information that all can be pulled out. These patterns can be pulled out from all these different sources of information. It also can help us make predictions based on the data that it's able to organize and recognize those patterns. And then there's also the opportunity to learn from data. As we put more and more information into these learning models, those models become smarter and be able to aggregate information. Now, for organizations like a city or even for an enterprise, the challenge is, where do we put this data? Do I go put it in the Wild West of ChatGPT where I have my own login? Or do we actually start to put that data into a sandbox that's protected with security protocols that is endorsed by the organization that you work with? Because putting some data into that Wild West does provide some security and privacy concerns, which I'll talk about. The point I want to make throughout this presentation, I'll say it over and over, is that AI supports decisions and decision-making. It does not replace human judgment, especially when you're starting to think about cities interpreting policy, being able to advocate for policy, to understand the nuances of different communities. The human element is still incredibly important. AI is here to augment our work, not replace us doing the work. So backing it up at the most simple level, I'm not an engineer. I like to play one on TV from time to time, but to put it in basic terms, there's three elements that make AI what it is. The first is the bedrock, and that's the data centers where data is captured. It can happen on premises within the four walls of this building or at a data center off premises managed by a third party. That data exists, but it's not organized, it's not interpreted, but that's the source of the information that these large language models are creating. Think about the large language models, an LLM, which you'll hear across all. So if you think about ChatGPT, if you think about Gemini, if you think about Claude, if you think about Anthropic, if you think about Microsoft Copilot, they all have large language models. And what those are essentially the brain that calculates and pulls together the patterns and the information from the library, which is the data center, and starts to create some conclusions and aggregates the data so you can make better decisions. Getting it just from the large language model becomes very difficult. So what we're starting to see a lot of is these applications that are going to leverage the information that's from these LLMs. It could be as simple as ChatGPT, but there's other applications depending on industry, depending on use case, that leverage the information within these models. So those are the three elements of what makes AI work. The data center, which is essentially the bedrock, that lake that holds all the information that we've captured. It's the brain, which is the large language model, and then the interface, what we actually interact with as humans to get information and draw conclusions based on the intelligence that AI is providing to us. But we need to understand the limits of AI because it isn't a one-trick pony. It's not going to solve all of our challenges. It's going to make us work more efficiently. We have to understand that it's not always accurate and that it always requires human review and validation. There's a story of KPMG located in Australia who did a large project for an organization in Australia, and the team that built it completely using AI and didn't review the report. The report was riddled with inaccuracies and wrong conclusions based on the fact that a human did not check the accuracy. So we can't lean heavily on it being accurate all the time. It's limited by the data that it has access to. So what has been put into the specific large language model, LLM, or the information that sits within that bedrock. So for the city, what citizen information exists within the servers and data center where you store all of your information? Conclusions can be drawn from that information. But if the data is outdated, it becomes very difficult. Yesterday, I was trying to figure out Air Canada's new elite status calculation formula. And I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, can you give me an overview of the new program? Well, what it gave back to me was the old program, because the new program is not readily available in the public domain, so that the language model couldn't pull that information. So it gave me a great summary of the program pre-January 1st, which I knew very well, but I wanted to understand the 2026 version. So that's an example of the data being outdated, the new data not being accessible, so the output is limited because of that accessibility. It lacks judgment and values, and when we start to think about it from a city perspective, that's specific around policy and the intent of the policy, and then also the community context. What community or population are you trying to reach with this decision? What are the nuances between X community and Y community in terms of providing a solution? It also can't replace accountability, because I doubt any of you want to stand up in these chambers and say the decision was made by the AI. I had nothing to do with it. You probably won't get off the hook very easily if you are leaning a decision 100% on AI. So the responsibility still remains with staff, with council, with executives within organizations. The fifth piece where there's limitation is governance and the insight from that governance. Every organization is starting, at least the ones who are forward thinking, start to create the rules and the operating manual on how you actually want to use AI. How do you want your staff to use AI? What tool are you going to standardize on? Where are you going to allow specific data to be put into an LLM to help you draw conclusions? All of this requires governance and an intentional approach by the decision makers who are encouraging AI to happen across the organization. We also need to understand those escalation paths that are important to making decisions about the data, where it sits, how we're going to govern it. So in terms of some of the common uses that we're seeing within of AI within municipalities, generative AI, so that's the chatbots that we're using, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the ones where we're putting in information and helping us summarize it maybe helping us make a presentation on AI 101 for a city council. That is where you're leaning into using generative AI. The next is knowledge and search assistance. This is allowing staff and counselors to be able to find information across policies and across bylaws so that decisions can be made better, or that there can be augmentation or adjustments to those policies or bylaws. The third area is around predictive and forecasting tools. And this is being able to pre-establish or be able to anticipate the services that are going to be demanded, where the staffing needs are. If we were able to use AI to look at weather patterns per se, and say that because of the weather patterns that we've seen over the last several weeks, January 26th is likely going to be a snow day. We need to make sure that we have all of our municipal staff on call, ready to get out and handle this snow event. Using these predictive tools can help you figure out, oh, Jane's on vacation. We might have to call Jane back from vacation. We've got Bill, Tom, and Julie ready to go because we know what their workload is, and we've been able to be able to essentially monitor the load of those staffing needs. It also helps with operational pressures. I'm sure today, in terms of the logistical efforts to make sure that all of the roads are plowed, the main roads, the ancillary roads are plowed and accessible to emergency vehicles and for people to get to work or for our transit system to get through. Being able to use AI to help with that can take some of the tension off. The next is pattern detection and risk analysis. This allows, AI can help look at large amounts of data and start to determine patterns and possibly see where there are risks that could be mitigated. And that's where the human intervention takes place. And then finally, it's process automation. The tools that are going to allow administrative tasks turn into a more automated fashion so humans can deliver more high-value activities within their job. But again, I draw a very strong point to the fact that AI is supporting decision-making. The accountability still resides with all of you in this room and with all of us using AI to use that human judgment. So why does it matter for municipalities? It's going to help us create smarter, safer, and more efficient city operations. It's going to help us create faster service delivery because our citizens are going to be able to find information more readily, be able to answer their own questions, and reduce load on call centers and other resources that the city has to provide. It's going to allow those faster response times and that better access and better service experience for residents. It's also going to help on services delivery, so better response times and that access for the residents. It's going to help us optimize infrastructure. So I talked about the snow event that we have today. How can we make sure that we are putting the plows and putting the snow removal efforts in the right places at the right times, depending on the needs of the city? It's going to allow for that better planning, but it's also going to allow us to look at the equipment to make sure that the maintenance is taking place and decisions are made based on the conclusions that that AI is providing. It's going to help public safety. So we're going to be able to see that risk detection. We're going to see in Halifax, I'm going to give you an example of an application in Halifax around fire observation and the early signs of fire, to be able to use AI to create, to limit to quicken the response time for fires. And then finally, it just helps strengthen economic development. Within the Waterloo region and within the city of Kitchener, there are a lot of activities, especially in partnership with Digital Kitchener, where we're rolling out AI initiatives. With the Waterloo Region AI Coalition, we are looking to bring co-op students into Main Street businesses, whether it's a donut shop, whether it's a small manufacturer, to bring those students in to help start to create and implement AI solutions so that these businesses can raise to the next level and become regionally, nationally, and globally competitive within their specific business. It's also allowing the staff and the council to work more efficiently so that we can focus on areas where we can drive bigger impact. So where have we seen use cases and the value that it delivers? So for call centers, it's allowing to have chat bots. It's allowing us to help with request triage and intelligent routing of problems without having to have a human interaction, because those are all things that can be automated. That personal touch comes when that individual is routed to the right person to get the right answer at the right time. It's helping with planning and permitting, which is a very long and difficult process for many businesses. If a lot of this can be automated to help not only with the intake process, but also to be able to help the decision makers around the permitting and planning to summarize documentation so that they can get to a decision quicker. With traffic, AI has been present with predictive traffic solutions over the last several years, but it allows traffic flow optimization. It's going to look at collision analysis and make sure that our roads are moving in an efficient way, whether it's rush hour, whether it's the day before the holidays and everyone's out shopping. Helps with emergency management. So again, that early risk detection, and then infrastructure, being able to prioritize, help with maintenance forecasting, and then the administration element, which is where we can all work faster and more efficiently because we have essentially an assistant sitting beside us on a daily basis. But we need to think about the risks around using AI, especially in municipal contexts. The accuracy and reliability is something that we definitely need to take into account because AI presents very confidently. And I know I've been in situations where it's told me a response when I've asked it a specific question that I thought has been a little biased more so towards the positive than the neutral. And I've had to go back to my AI agent and say, look, I need you to provide me with an unbiased and neutral perspective on the pros and cons of this particular question. So you need to go into it eyes wide open, as that not oftentimes, but there are instances where the information is correct or incomplete, so it needs to be reviewed before use. There's also bias and equity considerations, especially when we're thinking about a municipal and city environment, because we need to make sure that we're not disadvantaging specific communities, especially when we're thinking about policy and policy at a very discrete, community level. We also have to think about the data and privacy implications. In a city, you are dealing with a lot of very personal information about individuals, tax information, location, a number of school attendance or school support. You need to think about where that data resides. So it goes back to my earlier point, is the city needs to be intentional about where staff and counselors are putting information within a walled sandbox that's protected, that has the right security elements aligned with it. We also have to make sure that there's a lot of transparency with this. We need to let our citizens know that we have leveraged AI, because we need to be transparent in terms of decisions that are made. What were the inputs? Yes, we were able to take all this documentation, summarize it, and based on the summaries from this documentation, we have made these 5 decisions. But I think it's important for us to acknowledge that AI is supplementing and augmenting some of the more minutia-focused work that can take hours and days of work to actually collate to get even a small picture to be able to make a decision. Then there's also the operation and vendor risk. So in these early days, we need to be intentional about the implementations. What vendors are we using? Are they reputable vendors? Are they vendors that we believe are going to stand the test of time? Because we're going to trust those AI providers with very personal and private data, especially when it comes to citizen information. So these are conscious decisions that need to be made as the city, as its organizations start to make investments in the applications that are going to augment the work. Some of the elements that we've talked about, and this is something that we hear about regularly, is the ethical use of AI. So we need to make sure that we're looking at it through the lens of a human being. All of us have our own biases, but we can be informed by the colleagues and people around us to balance those biases. Biases also exist within AI applications as well. So that's where that human oversight needs to take place, where the critical thinking needs to be taken into account so that the decisions are made from a place of intentionally no bias. But we need to make sure that that people are still supporting the decisions based on the information from AI. There's the privacy and data protection. We need to make sure that that is built in, especially with the city government-focused use of AI. That governance is very important. We need to look at the fairness and equity, and that's where we start to think about the disadvantaged communities, the communities where policies may not necessarily blanket a single policy may not blanket all communities, and we need to make that intentional effort. There's the explainability of it. Make sure that AI decisions are decisions that are augmented by AI are documented and communicated. And then finally, we need to look at using disproportionately lower risk use cases in the early days as we learn. And what we're seeing with some of the trials and pilots that we're seeing amongst cities, a lot of them are starting small and then starting to grow based on the confidence of that smaller pilot. But when we start to introduce AI, we need to think about how we're going to measure its success. It's easy to go and implement an application, and we've seen this over many, many years as we had more and more applications, whether it's mobile apps, whether it's applications that are specific to our job or our department. We need to make sure that we're building out metrics associated with it. Some of the metrics you can start to look at when you think about AI augmenting is service metrics. Are we able to improve response times? Are we able to make sure that our citizens have a higher satisfaction rating when they're having an interaction with any of the city services? There's productivity metrics, the hours saved, the cycle time. When I think about the work that we do at Communitech, even on our day-to-day basis, when we start to implement AI into some of the workflows and processes we do, I'm starting to see a real uptick in terms of our team being able to focus their time more on critical thinking and more value-based, thoughtful work rather than through the minutia of sorting through data for days and days, whereas AI can help provide that analysis very quickly. And so those hours saved are invaluable. There's quality metrics. Are we able to reduce errors, decrease the time for escalation? And then there's equity metrics, making sure that we have accessibility and uptake across communities. Even at Communitech, what we're doing right now amongst our staff is we're looking at who's using Gemini. How are they using it? How can we actually start to make sure that all of the team is using AI to help augment their work? And so this is where we need to look at who's using it, how can we encourage specific populations to be able to start to incorporate AI and start to see the value of it. Because it's very daunting to say, oh, we're going to use the artificial intelligence to help make the citizen experience better. We need to take it down a few notches, a few levels, to speak at their language. What using AI may mean for a citizen is when I go to the website and I put a search in, I get the information, and it's not just a PDF, it's a summary of 5 PDFs that give me, the citizen, the answer I need at that moment in time. That's where we start to see communities adopt it, and they start to see the value of what AI can, of the implementation of AI by the city, for example, can be.
If I can pause you for just 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have asked at the beginning. Would you prefer to go through the entire presentation and take questions at the end?
I love questions whenever. So if you'd like to ask a question, I'm happy to do that right now.
Sure, yeah, we have a couple folks in the queue here.
Oh, great. Okay.
Beginning with Councillor Singh.
Who else do you have?
Councillor Odu.
Yeah, go ahead with tour duty. Then I can maybe just key back in with when the presentation.
Okay, sir. Okay, Councillor Odin.
Thank you, Chair. And my question might end up being for staff. So if you want to skip and just say staff can answer that
Okay.
later on, then
Yep.
perhaps they can. In line with the website piece that you just talked about, my concern is around, okay, someone logs into the website, they
Yeah.
need some information on perhaps, can you hear me?
I was told if I take 2 steps, I can hear better, so I'm standing here.
Okay.
I'm standing there to hear better, but I'll come back to the microphone.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear me. So someone goes on our website, you know, they want to find out some changes when it comes to maybe they want to make some renovations in the backyard or something, and then how are we so sure the input that we put in, maybe going through different iterations of updates, it's given them the right information, just like the one you talked about with Air Canada, where it gave a previous information, because at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, it could lead to litigation or something towards our end because we gave the wrong information, so to speak. How do we ensure that that is not happening and the error rate is as minimal as possible? Yeah, just love your thoughts on that. Is that a
Do you want to give an answer, Dan? Or- yeah, go- I'm going to give a generic. I'm just going to give a generic comment on this, but there might be something specific for the city to staff to comment on. Yes, that's a problem because I had that experience just yesterday. What these language models are looking for is the most recent information, assuming it's not behind a wall, because a lot of the information, not a lot, some of the information on the internet, because a lot of the searches in these early days goes out to the internet and pulls from multiple different sources. And so anything that sits behind, let's say, a paywall or a login is not accessible by these large language models. So in the city example, what your website would be doing would be trolling the available information within the city digital properties. And if the most up-to-date information is there, it should render it first. But again, that check and balance, I think we're still working through. I don't know if you've got a comment.
Sam, go ahead.
Through the chair. So as many of you might know, the Communications Division recently launched Kitchener.ca that uses an AI-powered search with Municipal. This isn't an out, I just wanted to highlight this part that we do say on the website that results may contain errors, please verify important details, and then a privacy policy. So this risk truly could be if we didn't have AI on our website. It speaks to our content being up to date. And so some of the work that we did at the lab last term was created a set of guidelines for communications while they were doing this work in order to write content so that we could try to put our results up higher than others, which is a very similar approach to SEO as well. So, you know, we might be able to control the search on our website, but we can't control ChatGPT. So the best thing we can do is position ourselves with up-to-date content, not have versions on our website so that our users can get the best results.
Yeah, and there is a nuance in what you just brought up. Is I'm looking to find out permitting or for the renovation in my backyard using one of the generative AI tools, ChatGPT, or am I a citizen going to Kitchener.ca and actually doing the search there? So those are two very different things because we can't control what's out in I call it the wild, wild west. The only way we can try to get higher search results is to make sure that we intentionally, or the city intentionally, is putting the most up-to-date information in the public domain. That information that's like it doesn't have privacy concerns or what have you, but making sure that that's in the public domain so that when these models go looking for the information, they pull that most recent. So there is some onus on the city and the staff to make sure that you're moving with urgency to. You're moving with urgency to get the most up-to-date information available.
Okay, I need a 10-second answer because I have 19 seconds left.
Okay.
Are there any cities at the forefront in North America that are really pushing this, AI, and they're really going all out for it, and it's working out well for them so far.
So I don't think I would say a specific city. I think everyone's dipping their toes in, and I actually am just about to go into a couple of examples, but I don't think that we, no, it's okay. I appreciate you kind of giving me the launch into this part of it, but I will offer other questions. I think every city is playing around with this and trying to figure out where's the biggest bang for buck, where can our citizen experience be the best, where can we be more operationally efficient, and where can we make sure that the safety is at an all-time high using these tools. So I don't think there's a city that I could say is AI first. They're doing AI across all departments. I think there's still very bespoke deployments as all of us learn about what the power of this new technology is going to be. Because I don't think any of us, even some of the PhDs that we deal with at the University of Waterloo, know about the final impact or the end impact of AI on our society just yet.
Thank you. And Councillor Singh, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor O'Dooney. And a quick search, Gemini said it's Edmonton that has the golden standard for AI, but they could be using Gemini models, so they could be biased.
Yeah.
As we know AI can be a little biased, and that's what we have to be worried with. Now, this is very helpful, I think, from a beginner's perspective, as well as in some of us who have been researching and really seeing exactly the forefront of what AI can be towards municipal governance and service delivery. Mm-hmm. So long-winded question, but that's typically how I ask them. So I'll explain where my kind of query comes from.
I didn't bring a pen to keep track of it, so okay.
I'll try to be concise as I can. We're a very different type of a business operation, right? We do so many very different things. So we have community services, then we have operations model through our KOF, where we're clearing snowplows, constructing roads. Then we have transportation modeling from a transportation development perspective. And then we have planning, which is very different from all the other ones that I gave reference to. So large learning models, again, when you have one operation, it's very easy to train that model. Yeah. When we have cross-departmental differences, it's challenging to have one model that fits all. So the question is, is it good for us to look out using the general models that are out there right now? Do we look for proprietary that may not be as adaptive and transitioning and changing at the space with which the larger models are kind of improving and changing? Because every 18 months, it's almost entirely different system altogether, or the improvements are multiple times more. And the last question is, should we be training for individual departments or specific departments? Actually training the model ourselves that we can continue at improving based on what's out there on the larger learning models. So those are my questions.
Okay. Complicated question. I'm going to try to break it down. No, I appreciate it because it's got my brain working.
Well,
okay.
As you said, again, there are so many departments, and one of the things I'm actually leading towards is we need to almost kind of challenge yourself in reporting back in a given time and saying, how can we actually pilot from big to almost minuscule from every department's perspective of adaptive AI within that department, but that's a later thing, conversation with staff as well. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask or say something maybe provocative. For the last 15 years, we've talked about smart cities, and we've talked about smart cities at an aggregate level. Kitchener's a smart city, Edmonton's a smart city, San Francisco's a smart city. But that doesn't mean that, that is such an umbrella statement because it's a bunch of different applications that are helping the city be smart. There's no one smart city in a box solution. And so it requires investment at a much more granular level. So one of your questions is, across all these different departments, do we have to standard on a specific application? I don't think it's possible today because we're still in early days. I do think that when we're thinking about using generative AI, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, et cetera, I do think it would behoove the city to standardize on one of them so that the information, because what you procure, whatever that is, will be at an enterprise or government grade level where there are security boundaries and there's sensitive information won't leave that. I keep calling it a sandbox, but it's the City of Kitchener's sandbox where information can be dumped into. If you standardize just on generative AI, then everyone's singing from the same song sheet. That was one of your questions. And I think your question, I might not have heard it right, the other one, is should we just use some of these generic models or should we have a proprietary model? I don't know if you built a proprietary model today, it would be relevant or applicable in a year from now. What these general models are doing, they're evolving at a rapid scale because they're learning, the organizations that have built them are learning, and I think they're moving at a pace faster than a city or an organization who builds their own proprietary model can move at. Maybe at some point in the future, but when we think about on-premise software versus software as a service, we've all swung, for the most part, into software as a service. On-prem becomes very difficult to manage, and I could see that same problem behooving us with artificial intelligence and the models that we're using. Does that answer part of your question?
Yeah, just for clarification, other was, because again, cross-departmental differences, using a general model, not proprietary, but should we be training it individually as a large learning model, right? Large learning model for the data set that we have within each department, because not all of it, even though we do pride ourselves in being open source for our data, but there still could be a lot that we could be doing individually to kind of feeding that information so that the outputs are more accurate as well. Could we be taking that step? That's the last question.
I think that's a discussion with the IT organization in terms of how you want to, because some of that data may be very proprietary or very protected that maybe the fire department doesn't want the X to know about, or the transportation doesn't want the snow removal team to know about. So there's probably some information that as you're training it, you don't want to go out of the micro sandbox within the larger organizational data, a pool of data. So I think that's an intentional decision about what information are we training on it. Are there privacy concerns or sensitivity with that data set, and where do we want accessibility to it?
Thank you. Just before you continue, then I will ask some extension. So, can you help me understand like the errors that come out of it that AI responds with? I know you mentioned one of them is old data. I don't think that's the only reason, though. We're seeing tremendous advancements in compute on the compute side. I'm wondering if you can help me understand the difference between the data that it draws upon in eventually solving this versus the compute side. Like if we keep advancing the compute side, will that solve the data side, or are the problems rooted in the data?
The outputs are the result of how good the data is. So improving the data at the end of the day is where the outputs are going to get better. The compute elements just allowing the compilation, the patterning, the calculations to happen at a faster rate. They're not, the compute element is not making the information better, because the data that exists is the data that exists that it's pulling from. So if you're thinking within the city's sandbox, making sure that the most up-to-date information is within that, making sure that the most up-to-date information is external, so that the more generic models can have access to it. I think that's a way to get around it. But I don't know that we're going to see a decrease in errors in information in the next 6 months, 12 months. I think as we start to correct the data, because it goes back and learns from, say, Carrie said, no, that Canada data that you gave back is so pre-2026. And then it apologized to me and gave me some information for 2026. But we're also teaching it as we tell it, oh, you actually pulled this information wrong. So I don't know if I answer your question, but the compute is not going to solve for the errors. It's the data and us reteaching the models with our interaction, and the models getting smarter themselves.
So let me ask you this a different way then. So if the data was perfect and flawless, with the current models, will that result in flawless output?
I don't know if I can answer that I think that's something we could probably follow up with. If the data is perfect, will the output be 100% perfect? I don't know the answer to that. But I think the chances of it being correct are higher if the data is perfect.
At
But
the end of the day, garbage in, garbage out is the same.
yeah.
Two more people have come in the queue, if you don't mind. Next, joining us virtually is Councillor Michaud. Councillor Michaud, go ahead.
Are you on mute, Councillor Michaud?
Councillor Michaud, we can't hear you or, oh, there you are.
Oh,
We saw you for a second and you disappeared. 1 sec.
Councillor Michaud, there are 2 buttons to the right of your microphone. There's a little head in the middle of the screen. If you turn on the microphone to the right and press unmute, we will be able to see you again.
Councillor Michaud has disappeared. We'll go with Councillor Deneau then, and maybe she'll queue back in. Councillor Deneau, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. I understand some of this. Not a lot, but a little bit. So is AI able to decipher between false information and true information?
no.
Okay. So essentially, you could have individuals or governments force feed it with silliness, and when somebody goes to ask a question about something, the White House, let's say,
Yeah.
whatever information that's been fed, it could be given false information, whoever's looking for it.
Well, you have to think about it this way too, is that these language models are not going to one source. They're going to thousands of sources and pulling information. So if there's one bad actor or small group of bad actors, let's hope it's not, there's not a large group of bad actors, but if these bad actors have put erroneous information into the ether, into the data set, the AI is also going to all the other possible places where it could find it. Now, when you're using like ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, oftentimes it includes a link to where the information came from. So you can actually click through to say, that's a questionable response. I'm not sure if I believe it. So you can go and actually read the link where it's sourcing that information. So you can use your human judgment, because we still need humans to be the decision makers and the arbiters of the information that it compiles. So you can go and do that check. But it's just a lesson to us and a reminder to us that we have to not rely 100% on the data. It's making our jobs easier. It's making us collate information in a more organized, quick way, but it's up to us to be able to do the critical thinking on, is this correct or is this incorrect, or is it the best path forward that I'm going to suggest?
So it's kind of like Wikipedia. It's not all true.
That's a great analogy of it. Yeah.
And so with, what's that? He's not the president of Venezuela. As we move further down the road, what will the effect on employment look like? How many people are set to potentially lose their jobs with the adaptation of AI?
There's a lot of, that's, the big headlines that get all of our attention is we're going to lose our jobs because of AI. I still think that there's a small portion of the employment population that will be affected, but those employees are going to be able to be up-leveled to do more high-impact work. Like, I think of myself trying to collate a large data set. I'm able to get that done in 15 minutes by interacting with my particular agent, but I'm able then to create much higher value work. So there are monotonous tasks that AI will be able to take over, but some of these monotonous tasks aren't where we want to put our resources, and especially with a city, with governments, even with organizations, we don't have unlimited resources in terms of hiring people. And so this allows us to make the best of the people we have or the limited extra headcount that we're able to hire for. So I'd say they're largely, I think back to when mobile phones came into like were the, you know, the most important thing on anyone's mind, and then tablets came. And the death of laptops. We were never going to have laptops anymore. We were going to walk around with tablets. We were going to interact with a touch screen, and we weren't going to need laptops anymore. Fast forward 15 years, how many of you have tablets? One as your main, two as your main device in this room right now. So there's use cases for specific things. And so mobile phones have their place, tablets have their place, and laptops have their place. I think the same can be said for AI in that it's going to help us do our jobs better, but not necessarily disintermediate individuals in their specific jobs.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think the last person with questions for now is Councillor Inez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davey. I guess my question is maybe not so much for the delegate right now, but are we asking general questions for whatever right now, or is that going to be after this? Because I have some specific questions I would like to ask, and I just didn't think it's appropriate at this time.
Yeah, certainly. I think really, if we did get a little bit sort of off track, but I mean, if questions related to the presentation at this point, and then afterwards, any questions the delegation can answer, we'd be happy to hear her expertise, or if it's more of a staff-related question, then staff can answer that as well. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to ask this to staff, but I guess, and since we have you up here, what is a great online course that members of council and committee could use to learn? Because you see all these people out there saying, you know.
Yes.
I would like to take something, but I don't know which one to trust.
I think I'm going to have to take that offline. I think staff might be able to help you. I do think it's a challenge, though, because everyone wants to use AI, but they don't know how. It's really about experimenting.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to dip our toe in to start to understand the power of it. Like the way I'm using my generative AI today is so much different than I was 8 months ago, just because I've experimented with it. But I think we also have to look to the workforce and those who might be AI first. So those individuals who are newly graduated, who are involved in the tech scene, are the ones who are going to teach us. Like my daughter just graduated from engineering, and the way she uses AI is so profoundly different than any way I would think about it. She has a full-time job doing software engineering at a large communications company in Canada, and she has 3 agents doing her work for her. She has built a software developer, a architect, an assistant, a orchestration, yada, yada agent. And she gives them a task and has them go do the work and come back, and then she manipulates the work and is like, no, this is wrong, go back and work on it again. But she's able to do more impactful work. But she's just out of university, and she's used AI for 3 years to help in courses and how it's used. So I do think we need to look at those individuals who are AI first to help teach us to use AI in a more profound way. But to answer your question, I do not have a course that you can look at.
Okay. That's really cool that she can use 3 agents. I wouldn't mind having 3 agents on.
I know, but you can. So yeah, you can. And she's now going to add a project manager to make sure that they do things in a more efficient way. So, but her team and her managers are all more tenured, have been working for 15, 20 years, and she's the AI expert. But she didn't do any AI course per se. She just experimented and is just so far along the learning curve that we can follow and learn from that.
Okay, thank you.
And when the lower AIs get upset with the project manager, they'll have to have an AI for HR.
Yeah. Yes.
Councilor Rooney?
I'm sorry, my final question. Just want to get your thoughts. I know early on you talked about the importance of governance and ethical. From our end, since we're not operational and we don't see the day-to-day with these, types of things, What sort of questions should we be asking at our level with our staff? What sort of reports should be coming to us when it comes to AI? Because there's a likelihood it's when it goes wrong, when it goes way off, that's when we would hear about it. But when it's like the daily operations, we're probably not going to hear much about it. It's just part of what is happening on a day-to-day. So I wanted to just get your thoughts on that.
I think creating a governance and oversight, I say manual for lack of a better word, on how the city is going to use AI, where it's going to be impactful, where it's not going, where you don't believe it's going to be impactful, how you're going to ensure the security and privacy of specific data, and which people are going to use it. And then you have to look at where are the data sources that you're going to pull this information from, that you're going to feed into the AI. So I think it's an intentional effort to come up with, and one of the examples I'm going to, does it still work? Oh, hold on. So Toronto, for example, they've come up with a framework for generative AI that they've started to unfold, to unlock within the city. And it's going to help them provide guidance for how staff should use it, how your citizens you would like them to use it. It sets the expectations around privacy and transparency and accountability, like I mentioned, and where AI should and shouldn't be used. There are specific places, I'm sure, in the city where you do not want to use AI because of a necessarily human touch or a need for human intervention to make decisions, or the intelligence that resides within individuals, decide where it will and will not be used. It helps to alleviate the challenge, the risks associated with it. I think there needs to be intentional discussions amongst staff, but then also amongst councillors around where you want AI incorporated and where you think quick wins will be. But I think you have to start small, and that's where you're going to start to learn where you stumble. But you have to do that crawl, walk, run approach to AI rather than, we're going to be a smart city. Yes, great, but we're going to start being a smart city in parking, in automating traffic, and in one other area. That's where you start to become AI first, just like smart cities started with one initiative.
Okay, actually, there are actually no further questions. You want to continue with your
Okay. I just have a few more things to talk about, just some examples of cities across Canada that are using it. This is where Winnipeg is using a chatbot for their website. So it's helping residents find information and service request forms. Now, a caveat on this is that this is still a pilot, and they're learning as they go. And one of the criteria of using this particular chatbot is that they are not having citizens put any private information into the chatbot. It's allowing them to pull information, aggregate information, but not necessarily record information, personal information about those individuals. So they're starting small, they're testing it, determining where the wins are, and then they can start to expand beyond that. But that proof of concept is allowing a lot of learnings before diving in head first. Halifax. Now, this was a pilot that they did in 2024 where they used fire detection, and they were actually able to determine smoke from fires where they put these sensors within 30 seconds. So they were able to respond very quickly, and they have it not only in Halifax proper, but in the larger municipality. This, again, was a pilot, and they actually have pulled that pilot offline right now because they're taking the learnings from the pilot before they go to expand it on a broader scale. So they're pausing, which I think is a very, very impressive way to look at it rather than to dive in head first, is that they're looking at what was the impact, where were their risks, where did this particular application, the application was called Fire Scout, where did Fire Scout fall down, where was it helpful, and where can we make sure that it's the most impactful? So I think this is a good example of we tried something, we're pausing to reflect, and then we're going to go for a larger deployment. But they're still evaluating it now. At least the articles I was reading was up to December of this past year. So they are looking at it on a go-forward basis. I talked about Toronto and that they've actually come up with a framework of using generative AI across the city. The Toronto Public Library is doing pilots using AI specific, but they're building their pilots based under this framework. So that provides that umbrella of guidance on how we should do deployments. And so the Toronto Public Library is one of the first use cases operating under the framework. So I just want to close out with why it matters. We're seeing it used in Canadian municipalities across the country, which is great because we're trying to find efficiencies to improve services, to improve safety, to help operations become more efficient. I do think that they need to start. You need to find point solutions, so across different departments, find the application of AI that will be most impactful within a specific workflow. I've talked about this a lot, is that it supports decision-making. It does not replace decision-making. So it helps staff to work quickly, to be able to aggregate information so that decisions can be made in a more expedient way, but we have to make sure that the humans are the ones that are accountable for those decisions. The highest value are those use cases that are practical and low risk. So I would not go and deploy AI in one of your most high impact, highly exposed applications or instances across the city. Find some quick wins where you can learn. Think about Halifax. They had a specific application. They've taken the learnings, and now they're reflecting on how they're going to deploy it in a more broad sense. So we need to think about places where the impact could be. It could be in service delivery, so on kitchener.ca. It could be in planning. It could be in infrastructure, deploying infrastructure in a more efficient way. And then administrative efficiency. I think all of us can find ways today and in 3 months that AI can make us work faster, or work smarter, not harder. I think the responsible use, and we've talked about it, really requires governance and oversight, and I do think it should be a mandate for the city and for the staff to start to really think deeply about governance over AI use across this organization. And the last point is that to start small, to see what the impact is, see where the wins, see where the losses are, so that you can take those learnings to the next deployment, so that Kitchener can become an AI-first city in the view of within Canada. So my last comment is that it's not about replacing people or judgment. It's about giving you, the city, the chance to serve residents well, responsibly, transparently, and in many cases, faster. Those are my comments. I welcome any other questions. And if you want to follow up, I'm happy to answer. Both Matthew and I are available after today.
Yeah, excellent. Very much appreciate the presentation. There are a few people in the queue now. I'm assuming more may jump in after, beginning with Councillor Singh.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the information that you've added. I think it's stirred up already some more inquiries that's going to allow us further conversation with our staff. One of the things that early on in the presentation, Sean had said it, but mentioning that Communitech is developing their own agent or model that's going to help small businesses to see how AI can be a part of their operation to help them scale up. This is not a question, but you can maybe get more information on that. I just want to say is, as an initiative of the City of Kitchener, we have Love My Business initiative that hopefully that's something that we can perhaps augment from our City of Kitchener focused lens of supporting small businesses across the city, like the love, support local kind of perspective, and at the same time, as what you guys are doing and helping them scale up as well. So more of a comment, but if you want to give more specifics to that program, that would be
great. So I'll just clarify, is we're not building our own agent. We are bringing together a number of interested parties across the region for the Waterloo Region AI Coalition. And with that, our intention is to help accelerate the adoption of AI in our local businesses.
Right.
So whether it's a small manufacturer, whether it's a chain of hair salons, how can they incorporate AI? And our intention is that we're going to match co-op students with small businesses across the region, small and mid-sized businesses. We think the sweet spot is 50 to 200 to start. We can go downstream after we get our feet are under us, because smaller businesses, like really small businesses, have much different needs and limited IT resources. But we're going to be matching co-op students with these businesses, and we're going to be using an external vendor who's going to help manage the co-ops to make sure that the output that they're producing is beneficial. But they're going to go in and solve a problem for an organization, a business, local business, to help them automate it so that they can see AI give returns in terms of more hours available of staff, be able to have better customer experience, be able to drive better decision making, et cetera, et cetera. So Waterloo Region AI Coalition and we can give you more information on that afterwards.
This is more of a
Sorry, Councillor Singh, just wanted to follow up. I think Matthew wanted to follow up, and then Mr. Chapman to speak as well.
Just to reinforce that the city is a part of that coalition, and I also know that the Small Business Center is sitting at the kind of day-to-day working steering level, so certainly that voice is well represented, but yeah, happy to follow up with more information.
That's kind of what I expected, but I think there's ways that we can champion what's happening. And so one of the things of Love My Business is to showcase the businesses that are local within Kitchener itself. And if any businesses that are maybe taking advantage of this, that could be a framework through Love My Business that we could be showcasing. And that helps others to realize the efficiencies and benefits of adopting early AI.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really important, is to show the wins. Just like we talk about the wins in different cities in terms of using AI for specific application in a specific department, if we can show our citizens, our residents, the power that AI makes for local businesses, the business next door is going to talk to the business that's AI powered, and we're going to start to see this like snowball. Excuse the reference, but snow is top of mind right now. We're going to start to see that snowball effect. So we need a few quick wins of our local businesses winning with AI to start to see that next tranche. It's that early adopter approach that we're hoping for.
Mr. Chapman, go ahead.
Through Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor Singh, for raising this point. We agree it's a very important one, and where you'll see this coming back to Council in a few weeks is with the Make It Kitchener 2.0 refresh. We've identified this as a key theme in that strategy and want to talk to Council about how we can support local business through deployment of AI in partnership with Communitech. So you'll see this theme picked up through that conversation.
Great, excellent.
There we go. Perfect wingman. Thank you.
Let's see who needs AI when you have Mr. So we're quite lucky. Last bit. Should we be focused on, you said governance, early adoption, but also beyond just, the leadership from council, maybe council members, staff, as well as outside leaders, of having a committee that leads the kind of focused work for that low-hanging fruit, as you pointed out, kind of concerted kind of strategy that operates kind of as a guidance as well as advisory role towards council as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think Digital Kitchener has initiatives already underway. There's some applications that are already deployed. I think you mentioned Municipal AI, GovAI is involved. There's a number of local companies, tech companies, who are actually contributing to the city today. But I think that would make great sense to have, I guess, a debrief on what we're using and how to create a governance framework.
The idea to Ms. Amaral as well, but I believe something that you're looking at working on. Go ahead.
Yes, and just, sorry, through the chair, we will be back here next week to talk to council about how we will be adopting AI and to get your feedback around that. We do have a governance strategy around the staff use of AI that we actively follow as well. And so, yes, we are working with local companies. We do showcase them on our newsfeed on LinkedIn and various places. And as part of the Digital Kitchener strategies, we hope to do more.
Okay, I look forward to seeing more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much for that presentation. It was great. I have a question and a concern. First of all, how many data centers are there in the region?
I don't know if I can answer that question.
I heard 5, but I don't know how accurate that number was.
Yeah, and there probably is. There's probably more that we don't even know about, because data center can sit within the 4 walls of a business too. The data centers that we're talking about that are doing the aggregation of data and, like, you know, that bedrock, they are some of the large tech vendors, so that we all know and love. In many cases, those data centers where we're holding data exist within Canada, and we're starting to see a lot of work around data sovereignty to make sure that our data is staying protected and within our borders. And they're working with some of the very large hyperscalers. Hyperscalers are the folks who have the massive data centers, but they do have properties within Canada. I just don't know how many data centers there are in this region and how many, if any, are with those hyperscalers. That would be something we'd have to follow up on.
Right. And the reason for my question is I understand that data centers consume a lot of water and a lot of electricity. So what messaging would you give to municipalities in order to be prepared for that demand?
Yeah, that's a complicated thing, because it goes back to my semiconductor days, which weren't that too long. Semiconductors actually, the manufacture of semiconductors alone cause an incredible environmental impact. And those semiconductors then go into servers, which then go into data centers. We're seeing a lot of work done by some of the leading tech companies, whether it's NVIDIA, whether it's AMD, whether it's companies based in Korea, semiconductor companies that are building chips, like Samsung, for example. They're looking to build these servers and this equipment to be more efficient, power efficient. The next generation of servers that, let's say, NVIDIA is putting into the mega data centers has much better power efficiency. So in terms of municipalities and the impact of power and water usage, it's not something to shake a stick at, but there are efficiencies that are being incorporated into the technology that ends up in these data centers. The biggest impact is electricity, and when we start to think about different electricity sources, you can look at solar. For us in the particular latitudes, what do you call it? Latitudes where we are? Like 49th parallel, anything above, we don't get a lot of sunlight for many months of the year. So solar may not be the best solution for ours, but we can look at wind, we can look eventually at nuclear power. There's a lot of work being done in Ontario around nuclear power that's going to be cleaner and better for us to power our data centers, because they are going to take an incredible amount of electricity. Is something we have to be cognizant about, and we need to put pressure on the vendors, whether it's the data center vendors, whether it's the folks who are making the servers, whether it's the people making the semiconductors. We have to put pressure on that supply chain to make sure that power efficiencies are built into every new generation, because we're going to need more and more servers, which are going to need more and more electricity. So I don't have the answer for you, but it's definitely something we need to put pressure on the tech ecosystem to look for power efficiency.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stretch.
Great. Thanks, Carrie, for coming in. I have a big picture question, and I'm really happy to hear that there is a governance strategy that we'll learn more about soon. I guess I have concerns about how AI is going to affect language, like spoken language, and if that will, end up being a mirror or a driving force in language. And so what I'm curious about is, are you aware of or thinking about or have any insight on examples of policy or governance that is going to engage at that time? Because I imagine it will be a mirror sometimes, it will be a force, a driving force, or a mix of the two. And so when are we able to tell the difference, I guess?
Okay, let me repeat back what I've heard to make sure I've got your question. The concern is around language and spoken language and how people interact with AI, or
how AI interacts with our language.
with our language. I'm not a linguist, so I'm not sure I can comment on that. But I think if you flip it around, think about the power of AI in terms of being able to provide translation services, especially for a city where you've got constituents, residents who are from all four corners of the earth with different language. To be able to offer services in a language that has not previously been supported is incredibly powerful, because you're reaching residents who may not have been reached before. So I think maybe the language is not perfect or will be perfect, but it does, when you start to think about the impact of reaching residents who come from places where we don't provide the language support, that allows communities to start to come together and speak the same language, even though or understand the context or policy or activities that are happening within their community, despite the fact they're not speaking the language. And I'd also caveat, like with our young people today, and I have a couple of them at home, they speak a different language than we do. They interact with social, and the way they write an email is a lot different than I write an email, especially if I was writing it to my boss. So we are seeing that transition of communication and written word changing just as generations, and this digital first generation interacts with technology and speech and language in a much different way than at least I was taught.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess I'm asking, my question is still more zoomed out than that. So how, of course, generationally, language changes, and the nuances of speaking. And my concern and my thought is more about how AI learns and then starts to steer that language, and how we use language is then changed by AI. And so my question really is more about, do you have examples, or are there things in other policies in other places that are working with this, where they're able to tell when AI is driving or steering versus when it's mirroring our languages?
I don't think I have an answer for that. So I could talk for 5 minutes with my thoughts on it, but I don't have anything firm to comment on. But it's a good observation, something that I'm sure there are people somewhere looking at. It's just not me.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think I see any other questions. I just have one question, actually for staff, if I could, before we conclude. And I guess my question then is, like, we had this great presentation. We know that AI is, I see it as a huge opportunity that we should be leveraging. I also know that it comes with risk. So my question is, how will we see, and when will we see attempts by staff to integrate artificial intelligence technology with, I'm looking at, like, I want to see some concrete, goals. I've seen read reports about artificial intelligence leveraging private sector productivity. They throw out actual numbers like 10 to 12% in terms of productivity. And while I agree with everyone that it should augment, we shouldn't be looking at reducing staff forces. I do, obviously, in terms of value per dollar, I see it as offsetting future hires as we make our staff more capable. So my question again to staff is, like, how will we see this integrated? Does staff have enough direction from council in terms of resources you want to see put towards this? Yeah. Ms. Amos, right, go ahead.
Sorry, through the chair. I will start and perhaps Dan can augment as well. So you will see some of our goals that will come to council through the digital Kitchener strategy, which was fully informed by the community. As a part of that, we have specific projects that we would like to take a look at, which will involve KPIs as well, so we can measure some of these efficiencies. Some examples of these are a process documentation agent, which orchestration is another word for it. And so, you know, how can staff be essentially interviewed by this agent to create process documents? So then we can actually turn around and use them at the lab to create some automation and efficiencies. You know, we already saw, well, maybe not from the staff point of view, but the AI-powered search, communications does have some analytics around that they could share with you. We're doing some work around perhaps looking at predictive maintenance for some of our buildings. We have explored through Pitch Kitchener predictive maintenance through our fleet. So throughout some of these initiatives that we will be taking a look at, which will focus on creating efficiencies for staff by reducing manual and repetitive tasks. We can explore some ideas at the lab, and should they work out, we could deploy them. We're also teaching AI to staff. So we have 5 courses a year to teach staff how to use it every day, which also reduces, we don't have KPIs for that. I guess it's more anecdotal. Anything to offer, Dave? Or sorry, add?
Mr. Murray?
Yes, I think I can add to this with what we've done overall with staff as well. So I'm very pleased that a lot of the items that Communitech touched on in this, we've taken those to heart. We actually have a policy on the use of generative AI, an administrative policy that we put together with our folks in legislative services. We've blocked a number of AI tools that do pose risk to the organization, and we've so ones that have the potential for people to inadvertently put data they shouldn't be putting into. We've blocked those ones, and we've made Copilot and GovAI the sanctioned tools for the city, because both of those offer that protection level. So we've done a number of things to, you know, support the use of AI overall at the city. You know, I think Nicole's work in the lab was largely around refreshing Digital Kitchener this past year, and now that that's coming to a close and we're getting the strategy finalized, more of her work will be focusing on the potential uses of AI. So I think there's a lot to come in 2026, and there's been a lot of great progress already with the Pitch Kitchener examples that were there. I think the other one that we didn't talk about was the bridge analysis with the imagery. So really unique ways of using technology and AI for potential uses. A lot of them are exploratory. They're not all going to work out. I think that's the spirit we've had with the lab, is to try different things and see what will provide the value. I think to the points that were made, we always have to be careful on how we're applying it and making sure that what we're doing makes sense and we're not missing, you know, bias and all these things that come into the potential of AI introduction, that we're on top of those and that we're getting our value out of it.
Okay, I'd certainly be happy to follow up the conversation later on. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for that presentation. I certainly found it helpful and useful. I'm sure my council colleagues did as well. Thank you so much. Oh, Councillor Singh?
No, staff.
Oh, staff, sorry. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Singh.
So I think, you know, we all come from a very, very different kind of knowledge base on this. So I think Councillor Ioannidis did specify a very important thing. I think we have to come to a very base level of equal understanding. And I think any future sessions that are planned may be more focused on educating all of us, and also giving us additional tools where we can go out, or perhaps other courses or seminars that are out there that we can enrich ourselves, so that from a governance perspective, we can give better direction to staff, rather than being just on the receiving end of, like, you know, nodding our heads, okay, great, not really understanding, but great. We want to get past that, because there's a lot of advantages and a lot of risks associated to the adopting AI. So one of the questions I asked was, again, kind of relating back to it, how we are very different than just one source of business that does one operation. We do a lot of things very differently from different departments. We can probably pick and choose where we can very easily automate AI in those departments. Could we be more aggressive? And I say aggressive in the sense of every department looking at it. It could be a very minuscule aspect of it, of giving some sort of direction as a council. Say, hey, staff, come back in a year with outline of pilots across the board from each department, and what would that look like? Just comments on that.
Mr. Murray, go ahead.
Yeah, I think our best response to this is really to look for the areas of opportunity. There's been a number identified through both Digital Kitchener, but also our technology strategy in terms of where AI could pose the best value. I think part of this is figuring out what's available in the industry. So there's a lot of work that's happening. You talked about planning and the applications for that. There are products that are out there. So how do they fit into a scenario, or is it better to try and build something? Like, I think we have to do that analysis for each one of those types of scenarios and really see where the best benefit is back to the organization. So these are no different than any other technology adoption. We got to look at all the factors and look at the costs and look at the expertise that we have or don't have, and make those decisions on what's the best route. Pitch Kitchener is a great example where we've worked with a lot of local companies and been able to use their intellectual horsepower to move things forward that we wouldn't even consider.
Okay, all right. The reason why I asked is, and it is aggressive, but still starting to force each department to start looking through the lens much before perhaps, waiting and seeing how everyone else might be doing it. And it's almost like forcing some sort of awareness and education from departmental heads' perspective as well. Right. So but I think we can have more conversation regarding this. The other question I had asked was about the governance of having a committee or advisory committee relative to AI. You said that there might be some work related to that. Can you give more detail on that?
Samuel, go ahead.
Through the chair, I don't recall saying that there was some work around that.
As you said, some regarding governance, on the governance aspect
Yes.
of it, but my question was more related to council directing that there should be a focused committee that does give on, that I think is observational on what we may be doing internally and giving ongoing recommendations to council as to where we're adopting well, where we could adopt more, where perhaps we're lagging behind.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I think as far as keeping council in the loop about what we're working on and how it's working out, once I put my lab director hat on full, once we're done the strategy work, Dan and I will work together. It's my understanding the previous lab director did come to council regularly to provide an update. I do provide email updates since I took this position last February, so I know they're a little long, but there's some good information in there as well. And so, as far as bringing things to council, I think that's when that would happen. Or should we seek budget? And so we are coming to council at the end of February regarding Pitch Kitchener. A really great update around how each of those pitches went. And then we'll come back again a little later with a plan for 2026.
I'm already over my limit. So what I can do is perhaps we can have that offline discussion. I think you kind of know the direction I'm going with and seeing exactly the feasibility and the advantages that could be in looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that we are working on building out our technology governance as a whole. I think, as a process of that's looking at the corporate oversight of technology. We can certainly look for opportunities where it makes sense to interface with council on that as well.
Okay, I don't see anyone else in the queue. Just before we move along, Councillor Singh, actually I raised the idea of very similar, like maybe not just AI focused, but technology innovation focused advisory committee. I think we're getting to that point, but I think we still need more discussion before there's anything formal. So I'd be happy to discuss that with you as well. Okay, there is actually, the only motion is that this be received for information, which I think is important that we take. Could I get a mover for that? Councillor Singh. Those in favor? And that carries unanimously. That concludes Finance and Corporate Service Committee. There are 2 information items. I'm not seeing anyone in the queue for those, so I will at this point take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor O'Dooney. Those in favor? Opposed? That concludes Finance and Corporate Services.